So where should we put our money? It's time to put our money where our mouth is. We are going to be listening to the budget statement. So where do you think the money is going to go? Would it go to minimum wages? Would it go to education, water, energy, infrastructure? How about investment in development in the private sector? What is called a venture capital fund. That will help me better understand the ins and outs of the budget, simply because he was once the man responsible for the Ministry of Employment and Social Welfare in his capacity as a deputy minister. I've got Austin Gamey with me in the studio. If you're wondering about minimum wage, well, this is the man who will probably give us an idea into what the budget means to you and I as people, and to parliamentarians as the ones who are going to be there prima facie, as they say, to watch the presentation by the minister. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise once again, sir. Thank you very much. You're giving so much of your time to us and to our viewers this morning. And before we go on into the substantive discussion, going back to your memories as a parliamentarian, what is the feeling, the atmosphere in Parliament amongst parliamentarians like when it comes to the budget reading? Is there strong emotions, or is it just business as usual?
Well, it's not entirely business as usual. It's not entirely about emotions as well. You just simply have to be a Ghanaian. And of course, representing a constituency, and that, for that matter, the broad nation, because we work, we interlink one another, and therefore whatever happens somewhere affects you in one way or the other. So everyone who cares about his constituency, especially those who elected you, even those who did not elect you, you just simply have to be in high expectation that something worthy that would make the people feel comfortable will be forthcoming. But managing a country is not that easy, and therefore you have to balance your expectations with the totality of the nation, and even those countries that adjoin us and those who are far away from us, because everything that happens in the world affects us in one way or the other. So budget hearing is something that is of great concern to any member of parliament.
How would you describe the participation or the role of parliamentarians in the presentation of the budget? Are parliamentarians just an audience, or can they actually do something for or against it?
Oh, it's a very serious matter. I recall, the very Herculean task some of us went through in around 1994 thereabout, when Dr. Kwesi Botche came to present budget. We were virtually 100% NDC parliament, with just a small number of PNC, one or two or so of the Eagle Party, but we were very, very, very serious those days. I recall myself and few of my colleagues, today the general secretary of the party, Asiedu Ketia, and the rest of us, we managed to push Dr. Kwesi Botche to the wall because we were virtually 100%. We did not give them chance to just increase petroleum product at the time. We forced them to retreat and so forth. And so we're not doing it just for doing sake, because we thought that our constituents need some support, some help. But having said so, Parliament is a very serious place. Parliament is the place where government's policies are brought, and they scrutinize it. And if they are really honestly doing a real service for the nation, they really go the full length to ensure that we are not just pushed about for nothing, but you balance it, the delicate aspect of you balance it with the national interest as well.
Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned your consideration of the increase in petroleum prices as far back as 1994, because that has recently occurred, and workers, especially those at the lower income end of our economy, those on minimum wage, must be feeling, really a lot of pressure on them. How much do our parliamentarians actually feel the plight of individuals who are relatively poor, less prosperous than parliamentarians might be, considering that we're talking about the wage bill as well, and how much of our income it takes, and the fact that parliamentarians have recently approved quite substantial salary increases for themselves?
Well, I would not call it substantial salary increase per se. The reality is that if barring any political directions that we all give to these kind of things, the reality is that members of parliament are supposed to be doing very, very serious national business on behalf of all of us. The only thing is that as to how the individuals and the political parties take it, that's another matter altogether. But generally speaking, as a policy, parliament is a very serious place. But if you take all over the world, is just about the same business. So putting that aside, the reality is that members of parliament cannot give themselves any pay increase. It's done by a committee that is put together by the nation itself, and therefore I think that putting that aside, they should be mindful, and they are mindful. I do know that they will normally be mindful about what happens to the ordinary person who work somewhere and earn just a little bit of something. But minimum wage is not a major matter in this country any longer, because a lot of people are their own masters in this country. Those who are working in a government setup, nobody is really on the minimum wage any longer. At least they are all reasonably above it, and therefore, but by all means, there will be the National Tripartite Committee that would meet to look at the need for adjusting the national daily minimum wage to a reasonable level. That is what normally they will do, and that will not have anything to do directly with Parliament itself, but with the budget. It will have something to do with it.
Would you expect the budget to put more emphasis into education, energy, health, or infrastructure?
Generally speaking, budget is the estimate that government of the day has in place to be able to steer the affairs of this nation. An estimate simply is an estimate, so we take it as such. Now you can either spend over it or a little bit below it, but it's not normal to spend below it. It's normally you go a little bit above it, but as to what extent you can go is what matters. Now, when it comes to education, it's a very serious matter. Education, health, with our environment, all put together are very serious matters. And therefore, normally in the budget, education used to take a chunk of the budget, and then followed by health, and then the other matters. But today, our wage bill has dominated, activities because of the transition of the change from the old kind of salary structure to the new single spine salary structure. We're now spending close to almost 70 pesos from a CD on the wage bill, and therefore I think that is a very major issue and should be of a concern to all of us to address it. What we need to do, therefore, would mean the finance minister come with some aggressive ways and means of generating more income and ensuring that we expand our tax collection system to enable more people to pay tax. Perhaps, to be honest with you, if you ask my views, I prefer some strategic effort should be made to sort of rather bring down the threshold or raise the threshold of the pay as you earn income tax from all of us, and rather maybe if it will mean increasing the VAT by maybe 1%, I'll prefer that. But we need more money to be able to spend because our population is growing, our needs are expanding, and therefore government cannot just pluck money from anywhere but from the system itself. And then we must make sure that our expenditure is controlled. We don't overly spend where it is not necessary. Like you rightly said, education, health, environment, infrastructure improvement is something that we should be mindful of and ensure that we all live and have some meaningful life before one day we leave this world.
I've been looking at how our tax collection system is rated compared to other countries. And I think we are doing quite well compared to other countries in our part of the world, in the sub-region. But then again, we can't really hope to tax where we have not earned. So we have to harvest what we plant.
Yeah, sure. I think
I'm talking about investment here. Investment. If we spend so much on public sector salaries, we have very little money left for anything else, including investment. And then the social problems come to the desk of the minister or the deputy minister for employment and social welfare.
I think that fortunately we have a serene atmosphere now to be able to sit down and have good conversation about these things. What should be done is to use the National Tripartite Committee as a body that the ministers of finance, led by employment and labor relations minister, together with other ministers, and the employers association and our organized labor should meet in a very sober atmosphere to have a good conversation about the way forward in respect of managing all these kind of transitions into an atmosphere that all of us can be reasonably comfortable. I say reasonably comfortable because nobody should expect that we should be comfortable in any way, especially so when the whole world is going haywire in respect of this turmoil everybody is facing. But having said so, I think that we should now manage ourselves well. We have been trying, but now we have to improve upon the people management, our productivity management, our income generation. The Ghana Revenue Authority, they are doing reasonably well, to be very honest with you, and bearing the little bit of people claiming that there is bribery here and something there. That kind of system should be also policed well, so that we reduce this kind of this is so we can rake in more money and ensure that we can spend it where it's needed, especially education, training and development of the skills of people, the health needs of people, infrastructure development to a larger extent. I think these areas, if you can cover them well, the sky may be the limit for all of us.
And would you say that the sky would be the limit for the sectors that are responsible for water and energy as well?
I think that the president has reasonably outlined that in his address to Parliament, and I think I have so much confidence in him, knowing that he's new in the sense that he's a new president on the block. We should give him the opportunity to tackle it the way he's doing it now. We do not have to belabor that point because he himself is having sleepless night, as he told us, and efforts we can all see has been put together to ameliorate, let me quote his word, the plight of the people, and therefore I think hopefully by June we should be able to overcome this kind of difficulties.
How much participation, though, can the citizenry, the people, have in the budget through their representatives, the parliamentarians? It seems to me like it's, even though we look at it in Parliament and we make it available to the public, it's almost as if it's, we'll have our way and you can have your say.
I think that members of Parliament, as I have done it before, we do our best to try and inform our people, but you can only do it up to a point. You cannot go the full hog. Fortunately, the decentralization has been further decentralized. I know it might sound too expensive for people, but the truth is that the number of seats that have been created in Parliament is worth it because the constituencies are quite broad and you can't cover it even throughout the 4 years. So bringing it tighter is good for everybody. Members of Parliament, after the budget have been fully approved, can now go and talk to their members, to the constituents, through the assemblies, as to what really happened and what should be expected of each and every citizen, to enable us carry the burden together and make it lighter for all of us. It's not for the president alone. The press can only do that much, like you are doing now, but as to how many people can follow it the way we are talking about now, with the kind of energy situation we have on our hand now, it's face-to-face talking that matters.
Beyond energy infrastructure, water, education, or perhaps above it, depending on one's perspective, are the simple basics of food, clothing, and shelter. And starting with food brings us to our agricultural sector. Now, what are your thoughts on that, and what would your expectations, personal expectations for the budget be in that regard? Agriculture, i.e. food.
My focus is on job creation. Job creation.
In the agricultural sector?
In the agriculture sector. Agriculture holds the hope for this nation.
How can government, or in this case the Minister of Finance, hope to create jobs in the agricultural sector through the budget? Is it policy? Is it provision? What is it, and how much of it do we need? What exactly do we need to create jobs in the agricultural sector?
Yeah, predominantly we are an informal sector economy, and therefore it makes sense. And I think without blinking an eye, I want to believe and hope that the budget will outline serious government concerns about agriculture today, in some few hours to come. And I think that the evidence is quite clear. Almost 80% of the irrigation project in Ofinso North has almost been completed. That means that our tomato demands will be reasonably met. That of Brongahafo in Teshiman and in the north, all put together, should be able to feed the tomato factories that are emerging in the country, so that we can generate employment in this field. Because if what I observed yesterday is anything to go by, it means the irrigation that is left just about 15 or 20% to be completed there. If it's done, it means consistently throughout the whole year, our friends and brothers and sisters in the Ofinso North there should be in business, and therefore cannot come down to Tema and Accra for so-called greener pastures that is not existing. So I think that is a good effort, and government should be encouraged to continue in that place. I think the SADA also holds a very major trump card for all of us as a nation. If we are to witness anything like reducing the pressure on Accra, Tema, and Kumasi, then we must take the SADA seriously, and therefore government should be able to pump some money there to be able to handle that aspect of agriculture and the environment in that area. I think we should be able to also improve upon our tourism area, so that it can create more further employment for people. I think the prospects are quite high, and it's up to all of us as a country to support this effort by government to be able to achieve this kind of balance for all of us. But I think I hold the government responsible for its comments that they've made so far, and it may be showcased maybe in the budget. If you can do that, I think we should be on the threshold of making it big.
Opposition to the budget, opposition in Parliament, opposition in the populace. What are your thoughts on that?
It's traditional even in America, wherever the world. I think that is traditional for people who are not directly in government not to bother too much in the sense that they can't keep clapping for you, so that people's attention will not be turned off you when they come to voting tomorrow. So for that matter, I do not expect the opposition, in the sense of opposition, to sort of clap for government when the budget is read. They will go at it, ridicule it, make it look completely useless. It's normal for people in opposition. The word is opposition. Once it's opposition, they must oppose.
Now, talking about opposition, looking at the way the BNFT, the Business and Financial Times, frames it, it puts it in a very nice way. Stability and growth on the agenda. On the one hand, we want to grow jobs. On the other hand, we want to make sure that we maintain stability. Now, growth and stability would seem nearly opposite in terms of their dynamics. Growth means you're moving. Stability means you're stable, you're standing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Really, what it's looking for is to ensure that our fiscal discipline is not taken out of the roof. You see, what we can do to ensure that we have this growth properly in place is to ensure that we perform and perform and perform as citizens of this nation, beginning from the public sector into the private sector. We cannot continue to have business as usual. I strongly demand, as one of the citizens of this nation, that performance management system should not be a figure of speech any longer. I demand that it must be of great concern to all of us to get to the table right now and put together and ensure that people are paid only for what they are able to put in. We should not pay people across board. We should pay people for what they are worth. So if you do well, you should be paid differentiated pay. We can't pay people, lazy people and hardworking people the same amount of money. It is very annoying. And so we should stop it immediately in this nation. We must have a policy in place, and I'm prepared to put my expertise behind it to ensure that we do not just allow people to be paid for paying sake. If you don't do well, you are paid like this, or you even get out, because our labor law is very clear. You can't just walk into a company and then go and sit around and walk about. If the gentlemen who are supposed to be focusing on us now, one of them is lazing about, not just doing what he's supposed to do, and so your viewers cannot even watch the program the way you expect them to watch it, that fellow don't deserve to be on this floor. That's as simple as that.
We'll have to borrow quite a good chunk of the money that we hope to pay for anything. Looking at what the World Bank said, it says we need to spend $1.1 billion more just on infrastructure. Looking at other financial indicators, for example, the Fitch ratings cut our outlook on when it comes to debt because of the budget jump from 6.7% to 12.1%. This ability to balance what we are paying for, how much we are getting for it, and where we are getting the money from. Once again, what would you expect from the minority who say that this time they are going to be in Parliament in full force?
I expect them to be in Parliament. They are doing their constituents and all of us a harm for not being there, despite the political acrimony or whatever it is. I don't bother too much about that, because that is politics, and if they so wish to do that, it's up to them. Fortunately, they've sent the case to court, and so we do not have too much worry about that. But I respect my friends who are there. What they need to do is to sit there and participate and do not deny those who voted for them and those who even didn't vote for them. But having said so, let me be very honest with you. Borrowing domestically should be reduced reasonably to a reasonable level, so that we can allow the private sector to be able to borrow and expand their business, take the risks that they need to take. But borrowing from outside, I will encourage that we should not deny ourselves the opportunity to borrow. America is borrowing. They are close to 5 trillion in debt to other these nations, so we do not have to be afraid to borrow money to expand, especially our infrastructure in the area of railway, road network expansion, and education. We can expand, and we should not be afraid to borrow money, especially from outside, on a long-term basis. But domestically, I would encourage ourselves to reduce it reasonably to a level of about half or far below, so that means that we'll be able to invest where domestically we deserve to invest, and not just borrow to pay for things that we need not to pay. And that brings to the question of we, the city's mayhem and trouble in the nation, because the cost of policing, of transporting army and our accoutrement to various places to go and just police people not to fight is very, very expensive. If we can reduce that, the money will be put where it should be put. But if we are fighting and maiming ourselves, you need more money to be able to buy drugs to take care of those people, and it's not just easy. So people should stop the conflict as much as possible, because it's very, very expensive to manage conflict.
It sounds like two trouble, one God. Actually, a multitude of troubles and just one budget. How well do you think our parliamentarians understand? I mean, how good is their working understanding of the budget and of the multi-sectoral challenges that it hopes to address?
Well, honestly, today in Parliament we have a lot of professionals in Parliament today. We have a lot of lawyers. We have many well-balanced teachers. We have a lot of accountants, economists who are in Parliament today. They precisely know what to do. They all know what they're about there. So I have a lot of respect for them. What they need to do is to be sober and recognize that those of us who put them there for a certain purpose, and the purpose is for them to listen carefully to what the finance minister will say for and on behalf of the president, and dissect it and find out whether this is something they want to comment on, and where your strength is. Put all your power behind it and contribute towards how we can ensure that implementing the budget will bring maximum benefit to the nation, and not ridiculing it for ridiculation's sake. And for a little bit of politics, it can be done. Nobody can take it away from them, because that's one of the reasons why they are there. But they must ensure that professionalism is also not thrown to the winds.
The public agenda, which calls itself Ghana's only advocacy and development newspaper, puts it in very clear terms. This is the expectation. It's also their front page comment. The budget must alleviate economic hardships. It must help people who are finding life difficult. Have our budgets done that historically? Have they really helped the poor, or those who are trying to achieve prosperity?
Like I said, budget is an estimate. It's an estimate to try and address concerns of people for the period under review. And we're going to talk about 2013 today. Fortunately, we have begun on a very strong note. Yesterday, a wonderful Hope Village park was unveiled by the president. Similar things are happening.
Hope. That's the word I'm looking for. Hope.
Oh, yes.
Have we had historically hope for the poor in our budget, or hope for those who are trying to achieve prosperity? For example, I come to you and say, well, I need 40 cedis to do something. And you say, well, I don't quite have 40 cedis, but I'm going to give you half of it. Then with that half, maybe you can borrow or somehow get someone to give you the other half, because you'll be able to demonstrate that at least you've gotten somewhere, you've managed to convince your own government that you are worthy of this kind of input. Is there hope in this budget? Do you think that there will be hope? And has there been hope in our previous budgets?
That's always been the desire of any government. You might not meet the hopes. What's happening in Europe today has some bearing on us here. Therefore, you might hope to do something, but what's happening elsewhere, that's why we cannot just close our eyes at what's happening somewhere. Is not our business. It's our business. What's happening in Benin today is our business, because some of our friends and colleagues here go to sell some of their wares in Benin. So if their economy, their instability is not in place, it affects our economy directly or indirectly. What's happening in Cote d'Ivoire has some effect on us, and therefore worldwide, whatever is happening elsewhere has some effect on us. And so we should pray and trust that there will be some reasonable stability. You don't expect total stability in the world, otherwise then there is no God, because there must be things happening to fulfill scriptures also. So I don't think that I am worried about too much of words that are put on these things, the spin aspect of it by people. It's not a hope budget. I think that there is always hope around budget estimates that are brought by any government. This particular one too, there will be a tremendous hope that is awaiting for all of us. Is how you view it, how you take it is what matters. If you feel that the budget has no hope and you want to go and sleep, you pay a price for it. You better work yourself also. We shouldn't be lazy people. Everybody should put his hand on the plow and start plowing.
Okay, I've been speaking to Austin Gamey, and we are looking at the hopes and, well, the recent expectations for the coming budget statement. Is going to be read in Parliament tomorrow. Today, the budget 2013. Abdul Karim Sina thinks that a favorable budget will not save the country when public officials channel funds intended for specific development projects into their pockets. Good budgets, low corruption, then will be on target. And this is from the UDS WA campus. Hakim Ibrahim Asamoah says tell us the outcome of the budget. Now that's a good one, because after this budgeting thing, he writes, they will still do impulsive payments like judgment debts. Well, that's not impulsive, that's court ordered. And Nana Danso Anansi says, tell us what you know, not what you think. So he thinks that we're putting a spin on it. Oniplayabad says the only way jobs can be accessible is by the improvement in infrastructure. Interesting. So I really want to see the minister address that in his budget today. And Felix I says, I hope our agricultural sector is given the attention that is needed.